Welcome to your Family Health Revolution conversation series with Carla, Atherton, and friends, where our HFF family comes together not to tell you what you should do, but what you can do. Take charge of your health. You can do this. In fact, you're the only person who can. This is Carla Atherton, Director of the Healthy Family Formula and host and producer of the Children's Health Summit. And I am here with a new series called Your Family Health Revolution Conversation Series with Friends. And today, Kirstie Gran is joining me to discuss the brain, the body, and the breath, why everyone needs to meditate. So I'm going to introduce Kirstie, but I just have to say, we should do outtakes for this. I'm totally recording this. I'm putting this on because I literally, it took me 5 times to actually get that out. This is number 6 for recordings for today. But you know what? Kirstie and I are going to have an awesome conversation and actually talk about some tools that probably got me not just through this day, but actually enjoying it. And that is like the breath, the brain, the body, how all that stuff goes together. And actually my own practice of doing those things daily, because then it makes life just more enjoyable and it goes much more smoothly than it would have if I didn't do those things and I woke up and had like a, I don't know, breakfast burrito for breakfast, like bunch of gluten. And if I didn't take any time to myself and I didn't walk and I was totally wound up and stressed about it, it could have been a bad thing. But here is Kirstie and I giggling, laughing, ready to have a really fun conversation. So I'm going to introduce Kirstie first, and then I'm going to invite her to join the conversation. So Kirstie Gran is a mother of 2 young free spirits and specializes in family health and well-being through holistic natural care, having studied various supportive and healing modalities, including nutrition and digestive health, holistic health coaching, neurodevelopmental movement, antenatal belly dance, supporting mamas as a doula, closing the bone ceremony, Reiki, and mindfulness. Wow, I just love that. Every time I read that, because I've read her bio a few times, and I'm just like, oh man, I like anybody I want to be with or be around or help me out with anything to do with like my body, my emotionality, my children, all that kind of stuff. I want Kirstie. I want Kirstie. So I'm loving it. So she has a specific interest in mama's health, pre-pregnancy, during pregnancy, and postnatal care, alongside children's health and well-being. Kirstie is passionate about self-empowerment for mamas and families so they can take control of their lives through understanding the root causes of the body's messages, building confidence in natural healing, and creating balance with the changes they would love to see in themselves and their family. Kirstie works with families to overcome health challenges using the principles of natural health, conscious living, and lifestyle medicine. So welcome, Kirstie.
Thank you, Carla.
All
Hi.
right. Can you
How
hear
are
me
you?
okay? I'm good. I'm
Yes,
good.
good,
Great.
good.
Yeah, as maybe
Thank
some
you.
some people have watched the other things I've told, maybe I've said this in one other interview or something, but my mic broke and so I have to improvise. But I think that we're doing okay. We're doing okay. But everything's
Yeah.
great with here. And so thank you
Good to
for
hear you.
joining us for this really
Thank you.
exciting topic.
Thank you for
All right.
having me.
Yes, and I'm actually, I promise I'm going to let you talk. So, you know what? You said you had a question to start off with for me. And you know what? I'm going to let you take that away with some comments maybe about our topic there. And the first question you want to delve into as far as like, where we're going to start with this conversation.
Yeah. So, same as you, I think it's so important to me this topic because for everyone, I think meditation and breath are the key.
Mm,
So I was just wondering, first of all, if you could talk about have we forgotten how to breathe, think, feel, heal, and be? Where
mm.
are we in today's modern society? How are we conducting our lives when in ways that are connected to the breath, and understanding the mind and meditation? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, and so okay, so I love that question. And I think that yeah, I do think we have forgotten how to breathe. And there's a lot of people who are doing a lot of work in this area of breath and breath work and being connected to the breath. And let's start really basic because If if we're here, you're a parent, let's say, and you've never really heard about breath work, and you don't really do any of that kind of stuff. You don't meditate, but you're interested to learning more. Let's start with the family first, like the children, because when we're born, we actually we take our first breaths, we breathe, we belly breathe naturally. We see that little baby's belly go up and down and up and down, and they don't have to think about it. But when we start to live life, or if we start off with maybe like a very traumatic birth, or the mama is pretty stressed out, while the baby's in utero, or after they're born, we are born into this culture of like fast pace, and everybody's like they're running around with their hair's on fire and everything's scheduled, and it's like the stress level is pretty high. And so we end up having things like disordered breathing, where we hold breath hold. And actually, I was just doing that, Kirstie, even though I'm talking about doing all these practices. But I think the awareness is all that, like it makes the biggest difference, because I just said sixth interview of the day. Like this is the sixth recording of the day, and it's 20 after 1 here. Okay, so just think of how early that started and how long I've had this ring light in my face. So I'm like cognizant to this. I'm not breathing as I'm trying to get that read your bio and not mess up, after like having this
Yeah.
marathon day. And then I'm not breathing, so I'm like clenching, and then we start laughing, and then it's gone, and then I'm breathing again, and I'm relaxed again, and I'm able to like, and so that fight or flight, like, okay, I'm aware of that, let's let that go. And so breath work and just breathing, being cognizant of your breathing, is the first step to moving past this kind of disordered breathing that we're doing. So we have forgotten in some capacities, or some of us have forgotten how to breathe, how to be present, how to be still, how to observe and be aware. And again, like the physical, like actually the physical breathing itself, like breath holding or breathing out of our mouths, which is stress breathing, all that sort of stuff. So, yeah, I think we have in a lot of ways, but that all is not lost. All we have to do is remember. So, what do you think about
Yeah.
that? What have you observed? Because you do so many really interesting modalities. And I wanted to talk about this particular topic with you because I wanted to know your perspective on that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you're right. Exactly what you said with babies. It's so obvious that they know how to properly breathe. And when we do properly breathe and we take that really deep breath, into the belly, we're activating all of the organs. We're getting that oxygen supply. We're communicating with the whole of the body,
Mm-hmm.
which shallow breathing, we're so not taught about breathing. In schools, they don't tell us, they don't talk to us much about the importance of breath, the breath of life. It's the most important thing we can do. So
Mm-hmm.
when we have that shallow breathing just straight into the chest, it's stimulating that sympathetic nervous response, where it is that fight or flight, because the body is not getting, the vagus nerve isn't getting stimulated through the deep breathing. So there's so much to breath that we, until we're conscious of, until we're aware of, like you said, and can be in situations where we're feeling a bit stressed, where
Mm-hmm.
we're trying to rush here, there, and everywhere. But if we have that time where we can take it to think, no, just come back to the breath, come back to the breath. And
Mm-hmm.
I think that's why meditation is so good as well, because we can focus on that breath. And when we have that focus, we are just concentrating on that deep belly breathing that is so important for our health.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Well, let's talk a little bit more about how it's important to our health. Like dig into a little bit more, because you mentioned a few things that maybe some people listening would want to know about. Like what is like the vagus nerve, and you also talked about the fight. Both of us talked about that fight or flight. So so let's talk about fight or flight. Okay, so we're talking about stressors, like, or things that we take on as, we interpret to be something stressful. So like traditionally, like, before we had houses to live in, like that were like the modern houses, and before we had all these other like stressors that are in our lives, we were more stressed about our survival, as far as like getting chased by a bear, or some kind of other wild animal, or something that was threatening to our very survival. And what's happened now is that we have other stressors that can actually really be that serious. It's just not that we're not being chased by a bear, but we could have financial stress, right? Like that's like we need money to survive in this world we live in. We live in a society that's our currency now, is money. And so people don't have it, they end up not having a house, not having, they don't have good health care, all that stuff. It is affecting people's survival. But then we also have the stress, like that our brains don't always differentiate, right, between the stressors. So it could literally be late for a soccer game, and your body's like, wait, what? I got like mayday, mayday, emergency, emergency, and the body's doing all those things that are responding to that stress, like to survive. So your heart rate goes up, your blood pressure changes, your brain chemicals change, your hormones change, and all those things go like, okay, I'm getting ready. Your digestion stops. You don't procreate because who's gonna stop to eat something and digest, and like, when you're running for, you don't even know if you're gonna live for the next 10 minutes. You're not procreating. Like, who cares? Like, you're gonna be dead. So all that stuff stops, and all the blood goes to those organs that are going to allow us to survive. Extremities,
Mm.
not to our brain. We're not thinking logically. We are like, ooga booga, I got to get out of here. So
Yeah.
just imagine, and you can see, like, right, like, so you can observe, and I want you to observe this, like, because I want to know what you think about this, how that manifests in like in life. So we're just talking about the stress. We're going to talk about the relaxation, anti-stress, all that stuff in just a second. But what are you seeing happening to people due to that stress response if we're living in a heightened chronic state of stress?
Mm. It's impacting every part of our lives,
Mm,
from our health, how we're feeling, the pains that we're having, relationship tensions, just feeling that we are in survival mode and we're not thriving. When we can have, the stress, where you've got the adrenaline, you've got the cortisol running,
yeah.
you've got the blood pumping to the arms and the legs to move. We can't heal. We're not in a healing state to do that. We're literally, running. The body is just only focusing on that survival to get somewhere, or to, fight or flight, fight something. So it's just detrimental to every part of our life and our health,
Hmm.
which can then obviously have that knock-on effect to our wider family, and everyone around us. So, we're getting more sick. We're not, the sleep is affecting all of our hormones, which are just critical. The dopamine, the serotonin, melatonin, critical for every part of our well-being as well. And it uses up the hormones that we need. So the stress hormones are using up, testosterone, progesterone, the things that we actually need to be able to procreate and have children. So it's affecting, reproductive, the fertility
Yes.
rates are going down. People are more stressed, there's more anxiety, there's more depression. And especially because when we're not breathing, when we're in that stress and we're not breathing properly, and the vagus nerve isn't being properly, optimally functioning,
Hmm.
um, there's three different parts. If we look into the polyvagal theory, and you've got the ventral vagal, you've got the dorsal vagal, and you've got the sympathetic part of the vagal. All of those, the ventral vagal is when everything is great, when we're feeling good, when we're feeling sociable, when we're feeling good about ourselves. And
Hmm.
then you've got the sympathetic, when it's triggering the sympathetic, which is this fight or flight, adrenaline is pumping, we're not healing, all we're doing is surviving. And then we've got the other extreme, which is the dorsal vagal. So when we flip into that, that's the depression. That's when we don't
Yep.
want to be sociable. We don't want to see anyone. We don't want to go out. We just, want to hermit in ourselves and not do anything. So we might just sit and eat,
Mm.
which again is good. We might not be moving our body. We don't feel that we want to do anything. So it's when we sort of can see all those, see them sort of for what they are and have that awareness of how it's affecting us,
Hmm.
then it's been able to make those changes that we want to do something about it. And also the big thing of me, this comes back to, it all sort of comes back to self-love as well.
Yeah.
Having love for ourselves to be able to be aware of these, and want to make the changes that we can make, to be able to make such a big difference to our lives, to have the energy to run around with our children, to see our friends, to go out, to have adventures, to play, be out, do all the things we want to do. And obviously nature comes into that. There's so many other things come into all this, but being out in nature,
Mm-hmm.
walking, deep breathing around trees,
Mm,
grounding, all of that, comes into it, but as well as the meditation, obviously.
right.
But yeah, that there's sort of so much, it just impacts every part of our life when we are shallow breathing in the stress state constantly, because we just, can't heal. And there's more chronic diseases as a result of that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And just feels bad. I mean, even if like we know um we'll see the downstream effects, like in our lives. We can't respond to life. It's a reactionary state. A survival state is not something that it's not thriving. Like, so when you're in survival, you don't thrive. When you are reacting, you don't respond. And so there's this chronic state of disharmony. And I call it dis-ease. I don't even use disease anymore, that word. It's dis-ease. It's like
This,
chronically. Yeah, and then we can't move through it or beyond it because it's like it's just constantly a threat. So there's no sense of safety. So when they talk in the polyvagal theory about this sense of safety, which we were so eloquently explaining, the dorsal phase is like literally, okay, we got fight, flight, freeze, and then we've got dorsal, which is completely like shut down. So we see people being diagnosed with depression when really they're like they're in this healing state and they need to complete that but they can't because of the stress, right? They're still in danger. They still feel they're in danger in some way. And again, those dangers aren't just physical, threat to the physical body anymore. It's to the heart, it's the emotional body, it's to, or other threats that we think are going to actually really be damaging to us that are societal or
yeah,
rules or shoulds or like all
yeah,
that stuff, like you better get a good job or you better do this and that, all those different stressors that we actually I guess we're choosing to participate in it in a way. And I know I see the many ways I've chosen. I don't know about you, but I've there's a lot of ways that I've chosen to participate in that.
yeah. And I think, but it does come down to the subconscious programming that we've had
Mm,
from the age, 0 to 7. The
yes.
mind is literally programmed like this tape player that runs along in the background, and then that influences like 97%, 98% of our life moving
Mm,
forward. So we're not even aware of that subconscious programming. We might have these behaviors, have these thoughts, have these emotions because of that programming from a very young age.
mm-hmm.
So it sometimes, and we can get stuck in that. The mind is, you know complex in that if we have that programming and we're not aware of it, because often with the subconscious you can't see it in
Yep.
yourself, you're not even aware that you're doing it. But there's great ways to help ourselves with that, to help retrain the mind.
Mm-hmm.
And but the mind has such a powerful influence over us. And come back to trauma. It
Mm-hmm.
comes back to the traumas that we've had. Adverse childhood effects from early childhood are a huge part of that. and
Yeah.
then and then obviously going forward from that, every other way that gets stored in the body, which affects our organs, which affects every part of us, and how we're feeling emotionally, how we can deal with that. And then obviously the behaviors come from those feelings, emotions, and that's how we behave. So, and it can be in a downward spiral. It can be those self-sabotaging behaviors
Mm-hmm.
because we're trying to fill a hole of that trauma, because it's not clear to us how we feel it can kind of leave a void, that trauma. So yeah, through meditation and play and deep breathing, proper breathing, and connections to nature, and all many other modalities, it can really help us to come back into who we really are, to kind of bring all those pieces back together and think, oh no, this is, find ourselves and connect with that higher self, which comes back into the chakras, and you know kundalini rising, which is great for meditation and yoga. So there's sort of so many aspects to it, isn't there? But it's all, yeah, it can be more tricky for us when it's that programming, that subconscious programming
Yes.
that we can look at, to try and think, how can I rewire the brain to be able to not have these these neural pathways that I just automatically go down.
Mm-hmm.
It's having that conscious awareness of thinking, actually, I'm going to choose to think differently, because thoughts are so powerful. We're not really told that, are we, as we're growing up, how
Mm-hmm.
powerful our thoughts are, and how we create with our thoughts, and how that affects our whole physiology, how we feel about us in everything that we're doing. So yeah, there's a lot in all of that.
There's a lot. And the cool, I mean, it's so cool. You could listen to it, go, well, what do I do? I mean, it actually, there are some simple things. Well, we're going to end with that in a little bit when we get to that. Like, what can you do? Like, what are some practices and, that are really like simple, and that'll start like getting you on that road, because it doesn't have to be an hour a day or something. You don't have to start with like 2 hours a day or go to, an ashram and do that. It's really in the daily living, and it's like the awareness actually is the first piece.
Yeah,
And then, you start to like crave it. You're like, oh, I really actually love that. And I love how I feel when I'm doing that. So I'm going to take that time to take that 10 minutes. That's all it took, or do something before bed, or, learn how to breathe, or doing some kind of breathing technique, just literally belly breathing. Me noticing that I was clenching, right? Like when I was like, my belly was clenching and I was like, I'm like, oh, all I had to do is let it out. That's it. That's all. But that's all it took, that awareness, right? And then as you
yeah,
do it, the muscle gets worked more and more and more. And so I
yeah,
have a couple other things I want to say about what you said, but I don't want to leave behind when we were talking about the fight or flight, and that's the sympathetic state. And then the other side is like the rest, digest, breed. Is it feed, breed, they say, right? Like all
yeah,
those things can happen once we're safe. And so we hit this point of safety, and we can move into that state of being, in the parasympathetic state where we're just like
yeah,
cruise control, we're good, and that's literally where we should be 80% of the time, maybe, and then the other percent, we got it. We can bring it when we need to. And that's why we do all the training. That's why we eat well. That's why we exercise. That's why we, like, why am I doing all this? Well, so that, the other times we can actually repair faster. And we do
yeah,
that with our brains. We have adaptability. We can,
yeah,
like even the programming, being aware that there is such programming, maybe we'll point the finger at like, oh, is this a program that I'm running under? Is this like questioning even that? And then you like, it takes a little bit of time, because if you've grooved in that pathway and you're like here and you dug that real deep, like you got that, like as soon as someone says, I don't know, the word, I don't know, light to you, that's not even good. Okay, mug. Someone says mug to you and it triggers this, like, I'm pissed off. That word just makes me mad. If you've done that for like 20, 30, 40 years, that's like boom, boom, boom. You're like conditioned to have that response. But so it takes a little time to get out of that groove, and have new ways of being, So it's like
yeah,
the brain is also a muscle, but it's also like, it's not the muscle you're exercising. It's the practice. It's like building new neurochemical, like pathways, right? It's like
yeah,
it's becoming more like the default is in these different brainwave states, and you can actually um not manipulate but encourage or move into these different states at will, actually. So
yeah,
some of these things we can really do a lot of, um uh I don't know, shifting in those states, and then we have a much better time of life. We're in that parasympathetic when we're not in danger, when we can recognize the dangers, when they're not dangers, and when they are, and if they are, we can move through them better and more healthfully. So I wanted to
yeah,
mention that. But
yeah.
another thing I want to ask you, Kirstie, but did you have something to say about that? Because I have a question for you
I was
after.
going to say, it's sort of like mind mastery, isn't it?
Yeah,
Because once we can sort of get that control over it, and like you say, we're able to not be so reactive to situations that aren't life threatening,
right.
which society, we've been conditioned into doing, because we are all divine sovereign beings, which
Mm,
gets taken away from us with when the mind is overcome by the left brain. We have the left brain and the right brain. The left
mm-hmm.
brain's more the ego side of the brain with that monkey mind, the chatter chatter. The right brain is more the higher self side. And we've been so conditioned to live in that left side of the brain where the ego is constantly going, and we're not getting any peace. That when we can shift into the right brain, we can really connect to our higher self and gain that intuition, which is really part of the self-love, and it helps us to see what path is right for us and make the right decisions out of love for self, rather than, I don't mean selfish, I don't mean, but just the
Narcissism.
right, yeah, yeah, no, no, I don't mean that.
No.
I mean the right decisions for us, rather than letting people walk all over us, or thinking, oh, I've got to do that, I've got to do this for other people. It's what feels right for me now at this time.
Yeah, and
So
in that
yeah,
state, you can hear that. You can actually
yes,
hear that when you can slow down and be silent. You can actually hear what that truth is, you know?
yes, that's
Yeah.
right. That's
Yes.
right. That's why meditation is so powerful,
Yeah.
because it gives us that silence, that silence in the stillness that we've been, again, so conditioned not to be with ourselves,
Mm-hmm.
not to be comfortable, just listening. Well, not so much listening, but you're just sitting, being with your thoughts, allowing them to pass through and thinking,
Mm.
okay, that is not me. That's a thought I'm having. That
Mm-hmm.
is not part of me. And you just allow it to move on and allow it to move on. And the more we can, like you say, everything's practice, isn't it? It's just the more we can practice it, the more we're able to sit and not just be like, oh, I can't deal with this because my brain's just going crazy when I try and not think about everything. I've got lists and I've got this, but it's just the practice. Yeah.
Yeah.
And
And
the want to do it because it feels good.
it does. It so does. And okay, so the question I had for you that I wanted to ask you was about your family. So you've got your children are younger than me. And so I want to hear about like how you do this as a mom, like teaching your children to these practices. Do you teach them like do you meditate with them? Do you do like what do you do to bring them to that state of just like the parasympathetic state most of the time? So you do teaching them those
Yeah,
skills? Yeah.
yeah, we do meditation. Also, hugs are great in terms of just
Mm,
calming them down as well. But yeah, certainly meditation. They get, they're good that they like to do it. They do
yeah.
yoga, which is great as well because it gets them into that flow and thinking about the breathing. But yeah, I mean, they are 100 miles an hour because they're so, they're like 5 and 7. They're so young, but I think already they know the value of it. They can talk, and I think that's where it's really good talking to them when they're that young, just
Mm-hmm.
explaining things about the power of the mind, about how we're powerful creators.
Mm-hmm.
What you think has such a big impact on your body, your physiology, and your creations that you can make, and what you can do with your life and how your body feels. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, it's a big part. It's a big part for us.
Yeah.
And just trying to, and there's, in terms of neurodevelopmental movement, which we just touched on, I won't go into that, but there's just certain poses you can do. If you cross your arms, you bring them under, cross your legs, it can just calm the whole body down. So there's just little tools like that that can be quite helpful if things are kind of raging a bit in the mind.
Yes.
um, so yeah, there's different ways of doing it, and kids generally really do enjoy it.
They do actually. And it's like, and it's as long as you come at it, like not come at it, come about it with a positive mindset instead of like this is one thing I like have this tendency to do is I think, oh, I'm not gonna like it, but I'm gonna do it anyway, but they're not gonna like it. And that instead of just being like, hey, I'm sharing this with you because that anticipation is like, why is this bad? Should I not like it? It's not for kids, or like, oh,
Yeah, they pick up,
this
yeah.
food is good for you, but you won't like it. It's like no. So I had to actually uncondition myself about all that stuff and like. I love doing this. Why wouldn't they? So we did
Yeah,
we did some meditation and yoga. They didn't, that wasn't their modality. So they chose other things like more, my son's much more like outwardly physical. So he like biking, cycling and things like that, or like hiking in nature.
yeah,
Like, those sorts of things are like they're meditative practices. I call yoga a moving meditation, like, so there's
yeah,
lots of different ways. And when you talk about meditation too, it's like not just being, it's not just quiet. Like it's not just sitting breathing. Sometimes there are guided meditations, sometimes there's music, sound therapy, walking, like slow walking. That's a hard one for me. I'm like, I want to go somewhere. So I like, so that's like really literally teaching us about ourselves and what, where our resistance lies, and teaching our kids that
Yeah,
too is beautiful. Like those little tools, like you
yeah,
said, I actually gave my little niece, some essential oils, and I don't know if she probably lost them or something, but I gave them to her because she was having like trouble with her emotions. And I'm like, well, just like smell this and like, see if that makes you feel better. So it was like, there are tools. You might not have them all, but they want to we want to teach our kids that they exist. And so even doing
yeah,
this, like if you're having like a stress response and you put one hand on your forehead and one on the back of your head, that helps to settle the nervous system. Or breathing out of one nostril. I can't remember which one.
yeah.
One brings your like energy and the other one brings you down, right? Like just not down down,
Yes,
but like
great.
it's all self-regulation. And some
Mm,
meditations give you energy, and some meditations settle you down, and some meditations help to release something like a trauma or old stuff, or like, there's so many different entry points.
yeah. And
But
that's because it's all about, sorry, I was just say that's because it's all
yeah,
about energy, frequency, and vibration.
yes,
We are energetic beings. That's all anything is. That's
yeah,
all this world is about, energy, frequency. And the music at different frequencies has different
mhm,
impacts on our physical body.
yeah,
So yeah, that's why it can be different. And I totally agree with you. For me, walking in nature is hugely meditative. Like for me, I can go out and I'll come back and I get these downloads of these ideas that I'm like, wow, where'd that come from? And that's because I was connecting to my higher self. When I was out there, I love it. I love being out there. I love walking. The rhythmic movement of walking. Nature's just so healing. Being out in the sun, doing some sun gazing. Letting that helping the pineal gland decalcify. And I come back and I'm like, wow, I've got great ideas of what I could do, which wouldn't come if I was just rushing around the house or doing
no,
other things. So
it
yeah,
wouldn't.
it's a great the kids, yeah, love getting the kids outside, climbing trees, hugging trees, doing all that, grounding. So yeah, it's great.
Yes. And it doesn't have to be hard. Like, I mean, some of those like some of the things are, they take some thought as to how I'm going to incorporate this into my life, because I've lived this way for so long. Let's say someone's thinking that, and I don't have time for this, or that kind of thing. But once you start shifting around, like I mean, what you're doing in your day, making time for certain things, like all that other stuff starts to fall into place. And
Mm,
like it's like, well, I don't really spend a lot of time in nature, but then like, let's go, you can become like, have this little bit more of an adventurous spirit or something like that. And you decide that, well, instead of like eating inside this, burger joint, we're going to pack a picnic and we're going to eat it outside. And as soon as you start doing that, it's like, wow, I can't stop, because it's so much more fun and enriching and engaging. So same thing goes with the meditation. It's not just, and also like meditative practices. And what I mean by that is where it takes some kind of awareness around it. There's an awareness there, rather than like an automatic response. So
mm,
yeah, and
mm.
I love what you said about our kids. You said something about them having that control over themselves, or their something about that, like teaching kids they have that, the power, the skills, right? To do
Yeah,
that.
the powerful the mind is, and also
Yeah.
just
Oh,
with
yes.
emotions, and not to be so controlled by your emotions that you know you- everything we're choosing in a way, to be a certain way. So yeah, it's yeah,
And
there's
that made me think about, there's actually a series of books about that. So there are people actually out there making materials and things that are really like, I love that. I love going to a bookstore. We used to spend so much time in there. We had like this little discount because we were homeschoolers. And we'd be like, yeah, let's go. And I loved getting books that were like, that were super juicy and we could just sit and engage with. And I think that act of reading and slowing down to do that, rather than being on screens all the time, like
yes,
spending time like thinking and conversing and talking about their
yeah,
thoughts, and writing and poetry and things like that, that bring you back to that state of, and I would say a meditative state, a focused state, a conscious state. Right. And you talk
mm,
about
mm,
consciousness. That's what you talk about with your clients as well. This whole like
mm,
conscious living. And
mm,
that's really the gift we can give to our kids by, by giving them, teaching them those skills, and whatever they take up, and whichever things they don't find as enjoyable, whatever, like what we're talking about here, how many things did we mention? Like 50, different
Yeah,
entry points to this whole concept of just slowing down, stillness, observation, responsiveness. And I think our kids really need that. We'll
yeah,
see those diagnoses go by the wayside of, like, autism, or not autism, maybe, but ADHD, learning disabilities, like anxiety, depression, and physical things that come down the road too. So
yeah,
digestive problems, huge. Like, right, gut
yeah,
brain connection, huge. Like
definitely.
that,
Yeah,
if you think about, like, your child says they have a sore tummy, get them to meditate. I'm not giving them any
yeah,
sort of like medicine. I'm like, nope, kiddo, we got to settle
yeah,
that nervous system. That's where that's at,
yeah,
right?
definitely, definitely. And if there is anything that they do, there's homeopathy.
Oh
You
yeah.
know, homeopathy is just brilliant, like you say, with essential oils and that so much. We don't need to have the medicated form that we're given.
No. Or the
Yeah,
stress
it's
that precedes that. Right? Like we're
mm,
going right upstream. We're learning that we're
yeah,
we're remembering how to breathe again. We
yes,
are remembering how to move again. We're remembering how to, like, what we need to actually, I don't know if the word's program, but the beneficial, like, habits and the muscles we actually want to work, going down the pathways that are that conducive to, like, a better, more healthy, vibrance, right? So,
yeah,
um,
yeah.
yeah,
And
loving this conversation.
those
We could,
natural highs, because
pardon
that
me?
because in that's the other thing, with these kids constantly on screens, they get
Yeah.
dopamine hit from these games or whatever it is they're playing. But I mean, mine don't have screens. They're reading. My son is just a little bookworm. He loves it,
Yeah.
and getting into that, reading, and just that imagination goes, because they're then imagining, what's going on. And my daughter loves crafts. She's a right crafter. She will be making all kinds of things, on it out of anything. So it's yeah, just that creativeness and that play as well is so important for
Mhm.
all, for children and adults, to
Mhm.
play, because we are creators. We're here to create. Every thought we're thinking is a
Yep.
creation. So
Yep.
when kids know that, and we can be in that creative playful mode, which comes when we have been doing, more conscious living, deep breathing, to be able to be there rather than stressing out.
Mhm.
It brings tenfold benefits. So yeah, natural highs, going out, kids being out in nature and going, oh, look at that flower, look at that bird, look at that
Yes,
tree. It's just, it's free, and that's what I just think is so incredible. The best things in life are free.
they
This is
are. Totally.
so
Totally, they
it's
are. It's like, that's like not a cliche, it's the truth. It is the truth.
no, we don't have to be spending money on, all these other things. Just get
Yeah.
them out there, get them climbing and trees, and it's amazing.
I love it. I love it. Okay, so what I want to close with, because now we're running out of time. But what I want to close with is, I'm gonna put you on the spot. I'm sorry, Kirstie. I'm not sure if you know any of these things. Like, you probably do, but and I've got a couple things in mind too. If it's not something you want to, like, lead or whatever, but, like, do you know of any, or have any breathing practices, or can suggest any meditations that are super, super simple if people are just getting started?
There's lots of ones on YouTube. There's lots of
Yeah.
meditations. There's a lovely one, it's called the rainbow, which, you're in the shower and different colors come down from the shower and wash over you, which is links to chakras, which is beautiful. But
Mm,
I can't remember what exactly that's called, but there are some lovely ones out there. If you listen, guided ones on YouTube to listen to, or even just searching um, different ones. If Well, some people like to record it as well in their own voice or something like
mhm.
that. So you can find scripts. There's scripts on the internet that you can find. But yeah, there are some lovely ones that really just take you
Yeah.
take you away.
And there's a flavor for everyone, isn't there? So if you get
Yeah,
like if you literally like type in meditation, you get like a million hits on YouTube.
yeah,
But there's some like I have some favorites. I like Joe Dispenza stuff, but it's kind of hard to get into
yes,
because
he's
sometimes they're really
great.
long. And I
Yeah,
started with that, and I'm like, I probably shouldn't have started with that because I was like really like it was almost like advanced, you know. But we could and I love Wim Hof's guided breath work. That
he's
stuff's
great.
really good. And there's
Yeah,
some like kids stuff on there too. There are some
yeah,
kids breathing exercises as well. But
yeah,
really with kids, what I love to do is literally like belly breathing, right? So breathing into the belly and out through the belly. And if you see, like, watch them and at first just observe yourself or your children how where the breath is coming in. It's if up, if it is up here, that is like we want to bring it down to the belly. So like paying attention to that or box breathing where you breathe in for 4, hold for 4,
yeah,
exhale for
yeah,
4, hold for 4, and
yeah,
making sure you're doing all that through your nose unless you're doing a breathwork exercise that's designed to create like almost like a hermetic stress response, but then release in the end. So
yeah,
lots of stuff. There's so much.
yeah.
And
And
but
exhaling for longer can be good as well.
pardon me?
Exhaling for longer, breathing.
Yes.
Yeah,
That's a
yeah,
great thing because that's super simple. Like remembering to belly breathe, to slow it down. Those are beginner things. And just for a few minutes, do that, like 5 minutes, 10 minutes. And you said
mm,
the longer exhale will actually put you into that parasympathetic state. That's all you got to
mm,
know. So you breathe in, or you can, and when you breathe out too in that breath, you can actually breathe out of your mouth just to like let it out. Like sometimes it's like like
yeah,
a big sigh. That is
yeah,
so it feels so good. So there's
yeah.
so many things. There's actually a book called Breath by James Nestor, and he's got some of
Mm,
those at the back of his book too. He's got some things. So it's like sky's the limit, but the simplest
yeah,
stuff is just to start there, observation.
yeah,
Yeah, and
yeah,
quiet. Just be
definitely.
quiet.
Yeah, and observe. Yeah,
Yeah.
and visualizing when you're breathing in, visualizing your breath as this lovely crystal blue color going into all the
Mm.
parts of your body, and especially if you've got any pain, you're visualizing it going to that area and
Mhm.
oxygenating it and revitalizing it, and that's a lovely thing to do as well because you're
Nice.
really sending your body the healing, through. I mean, breath is healing, obviously, anyway, but when you can
Yes.
consciously focus on that, you're sending it down, that's lovely as well.
It is. And one more thing I want to mention is the body scan. Right? Because
Yes.
I did actually a recording of myself leading people through a body scan because I do some of this
Mm,
work with people too, and so I lead them through, and I actually learned this at a very stressful time in my life, and it was I'm not going to go into that right now, but I was 15 years old, and someone in this place that I was at, they told me like, okay, if you can't sleep, try this. And so it was literally taking. He told me, okay, tense up. You're supposed to tense up your toes and then relax them. Then tense up your feet and then relax them. Tense up your calves or calves and then quads and then so you work up. So that was one way of doing that body scan. And then every part of my body was actually relaxed. But the way I take people through it and have done so subsequently is just literally like imagining your toes and then telling them to relax and then you move up move up move up until you get to the head and the shoulders and then it's awareness as well as like actually literally saying oh it's okay relax like because you're not even aware of like you could come off of your computer after work like this or driving in your car and you're like woo okay shoulders settle
yeah,
down like you can feel where all that tension is and so the
yeah,
body scan's a great practice as well that you can do with kids if if you want them to learn these skills to self-regulate or to also if they're having a rough time and you're like, "Hey, we need to settle down." And they will actually sit down and like, "Hey, mom, help me." Like I need this help and let's do this. Or it's really nice or fun thing to lie on the mat and do it.
yeah,
Yeah. Massage too.
yeah,
Okay, we could go on all day,
yeah.
all day. I'm not even kidding. My nieces and nephews like line up for a massage. Like they're all like,
Yeah,
Auntie, what?
yeah,
I'm like, fine. I
yeah,
actually kind of like it. I like doing it. But so there's so much more we could talk about. But I hope
yeah,
that this has given everybody a really good head start on just even starting with the simple things and making that more of a priority in life because I think I mean, if you're going to go to school, I think you should learn how to self-regulate, meditate, be emotionally aware, critically think. Those are the things we should be teaching our children. I think a lot of us are doing that, and I'm loving that we're coming together as a community to talk more about that. So, Kirstie, do you have any other
Mm.
do you have final words for this, for anything you want to say to people watching?
Yeah, I mean, just to say that, personally, I do think, breath and meditation is the key because, our higher self, we are all, I believe we're all souls here having a human experience. And when
Yes.
we can connect to that higher self, it is within, it's doing the work. And I believe we're here to do the work. We're here to help look after our body, um, connect to who we are, find out who we are, what we love to do, and to
Hmm.
be our best version of ourselves, which benefits us and everyone around us.
Mm.
So when we have that, effect of everybody doing that, the world, we change the world. So it's just such a wonderful thing to do. It's a free, you don't have to pay anything to start to do this. You just become more self-aware. You become more aware of how your body feels. You can send that breath to those parts of your body that maybe don't feel so good.
Mm.
And just keep, and even if you need to on your phone or something, just set reminders to become
Right.
aware. If you're, just getting into it, you can think, okay, I'll set a reminder for every 10 minutes just to do a few deep breaths, and
Mm.
then carry on. And then over time it just becomes a habit. And it's shifting those bad habits into the good habits that then you become so addicted to, because they're naturally high. It's a natural addiction that you just
Right.
want to carry on doing. You feel so much better. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's such, we're all divine sovereign beings who can, we're so powerful when the mind and the body are connected and working as one, and feeling healthy and happy and balanced. So yeah,
Mm.
if there's anything you can do just to get started on that, then it's just amazing for for you and everyone around you.
Awesome, Kirstie.
So
Thank you for those final words and for being here. It has been an absolute pleasure.
it's been brilliant. Thank you so much for asking me, Carla. Thank